of the Houston County Historical Society. Sorry for me sliding in here sideways, but welcome you all and glad you're here. If we could start the meeting by having the pledge to the flag by Mr. Glenn Baggett.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have a special program, and wanted to make sure everybody got their minutes. Any questions, additions, deletions, corrections?
I did bring a couple of copies if somebody needed a copy.
Okay, we have copies in the back if you didn't get your copy. So shall we have a motion to approve those? Melissa, and seconded.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jerry. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Miss Betty, do you have a treasurer's report?
I surely do. The balance that we had at our meeting of June the 11th in our checking account was $3,814.92. Believe it or not, we didn't have any income this time.
I've got some money for you.
We did get $1.88 in interest. We had no expenses. So the balance on July the 9th, which is today, is $3,816.80. And our certificate of deposit is $11,048.24.
Okay.
Make a motion, we approve.
All right.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I've got some money for you, so we'll have income for the next meeting. Are you ready? We have one of our members that is over at the funeral home today. I don't know if all of you know him, a charter member. Is that correct? I think we need to have a prayer for him. Mr. Baggett, would you,
Sure.
if you'll just stand, please.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to gather tonight to hear the story of one of Houston County's prominent citizens. We ask that you also keep in your heart, your minds, the Davis family, as Mike was so vital to this community with all his good work, all his TV and his photos and everything he did. He was a man big of heart, loved by many, and he loved everybody else. Please be with the family as they go through this trying time, and his friends who try and help get them through it. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Melissa, would you like to do an update, please? Archives? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melissa Barker. I'm the Houston County Archivist. It's been wonderful in the last month in the archives. As many of you know, we've finished our renovations, so please come visit. Also, we have a new newspaper. So if you're getting the newspaper, you'll notice that there is an article in there probably once a month, maybe a little more often, that's going to be from the archives, where I'm writing about certain particular history points from records that we have in the archives. So we've had 2 articles that have been published, and from that we've actually had records donations. So that's my hope, is that to get it out there and to let people know that we're accepting records. We actually had old newspapers donated, and then today I got a message on Facebook from a lady who lives in Clarksville, and I can't remember her name, but she is going to be sending us some class photographs from Erin Elementary, old ones, she said. So that's a good thing. It's generating people to know not to throw their stuff away, to donate it to the archives. Also this last week, many people think that because I'm the archivist that I know all the history of Houston County, and I'm the first person to say that I don't. I'm not originally from here. I've only lived here for 30 years, and so I will never, ever, ever get to the point that Mr. Bob McKinnon was. He was my hero when it came to local history. But and it was proven this last week because I was processing a record collection that had been donated by Kathy Harvey. She also passed away recently, and so it was on my mind. And she had recently donated a large box of very old photographs, old newspapers, the Houston Times newspapers from the 1940s. She donated tons of photographs. And one of the photographs I posted on Facebook, and it was of a gentleman and a young girl on a merry-go-round. And in the background, it said Brigham. You could see it said Brigham. And so in my mind, I'm thinking Stewart County because there's a lot of Brighams in Stewart County. So I sent the picture to Jim Long at the Stewart County Archives. I said, is this the Brigham store? And kind of went through the spiel, and he says, nope, it's not it. So then someone else said, no, that we had a Brigham store here in the square. I said, oh, okay, cool. So I got to learn about the Brigham store. And then I found out, because I'm wondering if this is a fair from a local county fair, or was it from, someone suggested it may have been from the horse show, but I don't know that the horse show was in the square. I think it was in other places. And then Sula Halliburton Dortch told me that there was also, during the fair, a Ferris wheel that was in front of Cleghorn's. So this photograph was from 1955. So any of you that remember that time, I'm not saying anybody's old here, but I would love to hear your stories about that, because I learned something new about this county every single day when I work in the archives, and it's wonderful because I love learning that. So that's all I have, but just a reminder, as I always remind people, don't throw it away. Please donate it to the archives. We have more room now that we can put things, and a lot of people are starting to really bring their things to the archives that they don't want thrown away because their kids, their grandkids are not interested in it. And so, and if we can save it and use it to tell the story of Houston County and our history, it's a good thing. So.
New business. Does anybody have any new business? And we have also filming Gary Baker. Thank you for that. We have double filming today, and we're turning this program over to the McKinnon family.
Well, it's Miss Betty.
Miss Betty, oh, excuse me. It's just you, huh?
Thank you, Deborah. Before I begin this program, I'd like to remind you that Bob covered most of his childhood on a program he presented some time ago called Growing Up on Main Street. He covered most of all of his early years in Houston County until he was about 13 years old. And that was when he was growing up on Main Street, and he went into great detail of what happened in Erin during that time. But for those of you that were not here for that program, Bob was born on February the 5th, 1927, to Buren and Eve McKinnon, who lived at what is known now as 4385 West Main Street. He lived his entire childhood in Erin, attended Erin Elementary School, and yes, he had his mother for a second grade teacher. He attended Erin High School until he joined the Navy in November of 1944. Tonight, I would like to elaborate on the next 78 years. He was 2 months from his 91st birthday and 3 months from our 69th wedding anniversary when he was taken from us. He was a record keeper like nobody I have ever seen before. Most of this program I have copied from records that are in his own handwriting. I found legal pads, tablets, steno pads, pieces of paper, and anything he could write on that he wrote what happened just about every day. A lot of what I'm telling you tonight was from events that he had written in detail. So some of it is in first person, as I am quoting what he had written. So please bear with me. Some of this is not very easy to do. And I quote, In 1939, I joined the Boy Scouts as a tenderfoot. Our Boy Scout troop was troop number 150 and very active. We had 22 members. Beverly and Cecily Price were the scoutmasters. I enjoyed every minute of scouting, especially the camping, usually at White Oak Creek. I reached the age of Life Scout, but entered the U.S. Navy before I could become an Eagle. In 1943, in the summer, at the age of 16 and a junior in high school, I was selected from a group by the American Legion Post number 54 to represent the post as a delegate to Boys State. This year it was held at Castle Heights Military Academy in Lebanon, Tennessee, and I was duly seated as a delegate, elected a county sheriff. No, I never made it to be governor. I then became a member of the Tennessee State Guard. All the National Guard had been called to active duty, and the State Guard was organized of mostly World War I veterans and others too old to be drafted or those that were too young. When I reached the age of 17, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant and put in charge of a machine gun squad. We would go out in the woods to practice with these Thompson machine guns. It's a wonder we didn't kill somebody. And then they sent us for training at Camp Forest in Tullahoma, and it rained most of the 2 weeks we were there, and man, there was lots of mud. I'll tell you about that later. I don't believe there's anybody here tonight that's as old as I am, so they don't remember Laureen Marable. Everybody remembers Laureen Marable. She was a tough cookie. In the 40s, when they had the draft board, Miss Laureen was in charge of the life. Now this is I'm drifting off from Bob. This is a story he would tell me. Every time Miss Laureen meet him on the street, she'd say, shake her finger, she said, boy, I'm gonna get you. I know when your birthday is, the day you turned 18, you're going in the Army. So anyway, he said the longer he thought about that, the more he thought, man, I don't want to go in the Army. I wallered in that mud for 2 weeks, and I sure don't want to do it anymore. But he stayed in the State Guard until he enlisted in the Navy. All I can say is, if the Guard was the last line of defense, we were in a lot of trouble. In November, with the war still waging, the Navy recruiting officer came to the school and recruited 4 of us senior boys, I being one of them. Being only 17 years old, I had to get a permission document from my parents. And knowing what happened at Camp Forest and wallowing in that mud, I thought, man, I may drown, but I'm going to have a warm place to sleep and a warm place to eat. So he got a few months later, and he knew he was going to be drafted in a few months. So they reluctantly signed their baby boy to join the United States Navy. We 4 were very fearful that the war would end before we could get in to do our duty. When I was called to active duty, I was sent to Great Lakes Naval Training Station, and I remember it was bitter cold. After completing boot camp, our company was sent to Yerba Buena, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Naval Training Station in San Francisco, California. During a routine physical exam, it was determined that I needed extensive dental work and was sent to San Francisco to a dentist. While I was there, I received word to return to base, pack my belongings, and report to the Fairmont Hotel that I had been assigned to be a courier for 4 delegates that were there for the formation of the United Nations. Those 4 delegates were Andrei Gromyko of Russia, V.K. Wellington Koo of the Republic of China, Lord Halifax of the United Nations, and E.R. Stettinius Jr. of the United States. My job was to pick up documents from the printing company and distribute them to these delegates, and then pick up the documents at night to see that they were all destroyed. It was a privilege to serve these gentlemen for 6 weeks. 3 of the men were very friendly, and they made small talk with me. They asked where I was from and about my family, and thanked me for serving them. The delegate, Andrei Gromyko from Russia, was not friendly at all. The United Nations Charter was signed on June 26, 1945, and I was privileged to witness this historical event. To this day, I still don't know why an 18-year-old kid from Houston County, Tennessee, was chosen for this historical detail. I do know that my bad teeth probably saved my life. Because while serving with the UN detail, I learned that the young men I went through boot camp with were trained to be medics and assigned to a Marine detachment. Approximately 1/2 of them were killed during this action, during the invasion of Okinawa. Some things happen for which we have no explanation. After the United Nations duty was completed, I was assigned to a destroyer, the USS Isherwood. And I learned later, when we were going out to sea, we were to take part in the invasion of Japan. But the war was declared over while we were under the Golden Gate Bridge. Our ship was assigned to take part in the Navy Day celebration in New York. So we changed course and went through the Panama Canal to New York. I gotta have a drink. After being discharged from the Navy, I returned home and enrolled in the Bowling Green Business School, which is now part of Western Kentucky University. Upon graduation in 1948, I returned to Erin and went to work with my father in the railroad cross-tie and lumber business. That was then that I met Bettye, a senior attending Erin High School. We were married on March 13th, 1949. Melinda was born in 1953, Tom in 1954, and tragically we lost him 3 days later due to a birth defect that today is considered minor and fixable, but then it was not. Richard was born on May the 12th, 1956, Betsy November 1958, and Leanne July 1962, and then Robin Jady also on May the 12th, 1968. Yes, I had 3 children born on May the 12th, and it was also Mother's Day, and it was again this year. As you can see, during this time we were busy raising children. But during my employment, we lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Meridian, Mississippi, before moving back to Clarksville in 1983, and then on to Erin in 1990. This is where I take over. Bob retired in 1992 and immediately became deeply involved in history and research. He would leave home when the library opened in the morning, planning to be home for lunch, and then Kay would have to run him out of the library when it closed at 5 o'clock. Upon moving to Erin, the first club we joined was the Houston County Lions Club, and he was later elected president. While serving as their president, he received approval for women to become members. He said they did all the work anyway, so they should be members. And for the first time, women could become members and eligible to hold office. At that time, a gospel and bluegrass show was held during the Irish celebration, and that was one of their fundraisers. He filmed all these shows and also the Irish Parade for their archives. In 2002, the Lions Club voted to award him the O.S. Luton Emerald Award for his service and volunteer work. As a member of the American Legion, he has helped for years to place flags on the graves of veterans buried at Erin Oak Hill Cemetery. One day he received a telephone call from Pat Garland. Pat had been told that one of his relatives had received the Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was at the archives in Washington searching for this information. Being in the G section of the book, he turned a page. A name did not pop out at him, but the words Erin, Tennessee did. He informed Bob that Francis C. Green from Erin had received this honor. He suggested that Bob get on it and see what he could find. Of course, you know, when you suggest a project to an organization, you are immediately put in charge of it. But after many trips to Nashville, to the American Legion headquarters, and numerous telephone calls, he was able to prove that this information was accurate. He also found where Sergeant Green was buried. The grave is located on private property. It is not in a cemetery. Before the man would show him the gravesite, Bob had to promise him he would never tell anyone where it was. This is why the marker is located in the courthouse yard. Bob wanted a replica of the Congressional Medal of Honor to be placed on his marker. But to get a replica, this requires an act of Congress. Bob was responsible for this, and he received the replica and permission to place it on Sergeant Green's stone. Bob was a member of the Erin United Methodist Church. He served as their historian, chairman of their trustees, and usher, and on several other committees for many years. He designed and did the wording on the historical marker that's located in the front grounds of the Erin United Methodist Church. He was a 50-year plus member of Wisdom Masonic Lodge and Knights Templar. He served as president of the Houston County Historical Society and chaired the committee for the pictorial history book, Reflections from Our Past. He made numerous trips to Humboldt to meet with the publisher, collected over 1,500 pictures for the book. For many years, he served on the board of directors, and when necessary, he would film the monthly meetings, and he also filmed the annual Irish Day Parade for their archives. He spent numerous hours and many trips to Nashville doing research on the Wells Creek Basin. He chaired and worded the historical marker and planned the dedication ceremony of the marker that is placed on Highway 149 close to the Houston County line. He did the wording for the marker of the lime kilns at the Masonic Lodge. He did the wording for the marker denoting the geographical Tennessee Ridge. One day, Nina came to visit and informed him that the leadership Houston County had selected as their project the cleaning of the 88 steps that went to the old high school where they both had attended. She said, I want a picture that Alice Miles drew on the marker, but you need to come up with the wording. He and Nina had worked together on several other projects, so she knew he would come up with the proper words that are on the marker today. That marker is located at the bottom of the 88 steps. One of the most memorable events of his life was in 2013 when he went on the honor flight to Washington, D.C. After refusing to go on this trip several times, Melinda finally convinced him that he should. She said, if you go, I will go with you. So she made all the arrangements. He enjoyed the trip so much, he talked about it for days, and he even did an hour-by-hour, blow-by-blow program about it at the Historical Society. In 2005, an organization called Quilts of Valor became nationally recognized. This organization was made up of a group of volunteers that made quilts for service members wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. Through contact with Veterans Organization, they wanted to honor all servicemen, especially the recognition of World War II service members.
Quilts of Valor are awarded. They're not just passed out. A recipient must be nominated. Quilts of Valor are all handmade and say, "Thank you for serving your country during times of war." Bob's niece, Melissa Shuff Romans, nominated Bob for this honor, and he was awarded one of these quilts, which is on the show and tell table. He considered one of the greatest honors bestowed upon him was being named Houston County Historian. He was very proud of this, as he loved Houston County very much. In 2015, he was honored by the Houston County Fair as the pride of Houston County. In 2016, the Houston County Area Chamber of Commerce, at their annual membership banquet, honored him by naming him Houston County Volunteer of the Year for all the work he had done in the past. This year in February, the Erin United Methodist Church honored him by naming a building the Bob McKinnon Scout Center. This building at the corner of Walnut and Spring is now home for both Boy and Girl Scouts. He would have considered this a great honor, as he had been a Boy Scout and was very proud of his troop. He had, of course, became a life, but he never made, before he joined the Navy, but he never became an Eagle. But he has a son that did. His oldest son became an Eagle and then went on to become, be awarded the Order of the Era. He is with us tonight, my son Richard. Bob was tired of people saying there's nothing to see or do in Houston County. So he compiled a book of pictures he named Places of Interest in Houston County, and he donated it to the Chamber of Commerce. Angie Nielsen, the Erin City Recorder, and at that time was president of the Chamber, saw the book and wanted a copy for the city. Just recently, Angie, along with the Chamber, applied for and received a grant for a Houston County travel guide. She called and said they wanted to use the information in this book that he had done for this publication. She and the publishing company used it as a guide for the professional photographer to remake the pictures to use for this publication. I was informed last week that they had dedicated the travel guide to Bob McKinnon that says without all the work he had done, this publication would not have been available. Our entire family is proud of this honor, and we know he would have been pleased with this recognition. At his passing, he was working on a historical marker for the Danville area. I'm sorry, he didn't finish this project. But I want to thank the Historical Society for asking me to present his passion for Houston County and the story of the volunteer service he had done in his life. He loved the research. I think that he got more kick out of doing research than it, because he loved it so much. And the final reports that he has written, and they're all in his handwriting, that was his passion. In his words, and I quote, "I have had a good life. I had the happiest of childhood. I don't know of anything I wanted to do that I haven't done. The best things were my children, my marriage, and being raised by loving parents in the greatest place on earth, Houston County." This concludes my narrative about the life of Bob. He made pictures of everyone and everything, very few of himself. But at this time, I've asked my friend Donald Bateman to close the meeting with some of the videos made of Bob telling short histories of the Danville Bridge, the grain elevator, the story of Jack Hinson, and others that were filmed by my good friend Gary Baker of SannaBlue Media. Gary has posted some of these to YouTube, and the Jack Hinson video alone has had 223,407 hits. It has gone viral. So bear with me and you will see the videos.
Miss Bettye, that was outstanding. lake since it was formed back in 1945. And fished the river and the creeks before the lake was ever formed. My dad used to bring me down here back in the 30s. I would have been 10 years old back in 1937, so I pretty well know where a lot of these islands and a lot of the structure is. But this lake is, at one time, was the largest man-made lake in the world. It covered 256,000 acres and something like 2,300 miles of shoreline. So I was here before the lake was formed, and can remember fishing the creeks along the river. Now, my great-great-grandfather, he was a circuit riding magistrate around Stewart County before Houston County was formed. And in 1871, when Houston County was formed, he was elected the first chairman of the county court, which are now called county mayors, and he served in that capacity for 3 years, 3 terms. And the town of McKinnon was named after him. In 1888, he built a little country store, and the post office was there, and they named the town after him. So that's how McKinnon got the name. And George up there in the front seat ought to be catching something. He gets first shot at everything, us being able to sit up in the front. Yeah. Yeah. What you are now looking at is the remains of an old freight elevator that was built by the L&N Railroad Company right on the edge of the riverbank. Freight was loaded from railroad cars, which the railroad track ran alongside of it here, and it was offloaded onto barges or river boats, steamboats or whatever. And I guess it was constructed in 1918 at a cost of $75,000. Now, 4 stores of it, when the lake is all the way up to SannaBlue, there's 4 stores of this are under the surface of the water. It was built right on the bank of the Tennessee River. Now, they loaded barges from the railroad cars and unloaded barges and the river boats onto railroad cars, so it was loaded on and offloaded. Most of the things that were handled there were agricultural products. They handled also with barrel staves that were produced here because of the abundance of white oak. It was, of course, it was no longer in use after TVA acquired all its land for the reservoir. But off the front of that, the water there is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 feet, maybe 60 feet deep. But it's a good spot for catfishing, and a lot of people have enjoyed it. And as you can tell, there's a lot of graffiti. There's spray cans have been used on it. So that's past history, and it will be there for many, many years to glare. There's a mussel diver. Years ago, the mussling was a big thing in the center on the river, and they drug a series of hooks along the bottom and to catch these mussels. And these shells brought a lot of money. Most of them are they made buttons from these mussel shells, and they boiled the meat out and fed it to the hogs. But now they die for these mussels. Now that mussel over there, he's on the bottom crawling around finding these mussels. There's not as many of them as used to be. This river and lake was covered up with mussel divers. One time I was coming back in from fishing and heading back up into White Oak, and I saw this mussel diver, or mussler they call him, heading back in toward the big water, but he was moving real slow. And I asked him, he's having a problem. He said, yeah, his motor had gone dead. So I said, well, where do you need to go? He said, across the river over to Benton County. I said, well, okay. I told him across over there. I asked him, I said, is any money into this, doing what you're doing? He said, well, if you really want to work at it, anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 a year you can make doing this. So it's a hazardous occupation. I can't imagine myself crawling around in the bottom of this lake with all the snags and old trot lines and everything that might be on the bottom. The railroad was built and constructed or completed in 1861, just before the Civil War. It was then called the Memphis, Clarksville, and Louisville Railroad. Later, years later, it became the L&N, Louisville, Nashville. But this railroad dates back to 1861 when it's completed, and the original bridge was here. And it was during the Civil War. They had several battles about the bridge. One time the Confederates controlled it, the next time the Unions controlled it. It was a vital link between the East, Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee. I think this bridge, that the glass bridge that was here, I believe it was completed in 1932, and I think it cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 to build. Well, when they dismantled the bridge, the piers that were left, these explosive experts that came in here to destroy these piers, they were to blow them out 30 feet below the surface. Well, they set all explosives and had everything ready to go, and it would nothing happened. Because these piers were made out of concrete when they used river gravel. They didn't use limestone at that time. So they had to go back in and redo it all to demolish those piers. And but they were blown off 30 feet below the surface. And the rubble from those piers are still under the water, which is, I imagine, a good cover. A lot of big catfish. Toward the bluff over there. That's Grafton Bluff. Now let me give you a little background on Jack Hinson. Well, Jack Hinson was a prominent, wealthy landowner and farmer in what they called Bubbling Springs area near Dover. When the war started, he was, I'd say, independent. He was non-committed. He wasn't committed to the South or North. He was against secession. Well, back during the time the Civil War, after Fort Donelson fell, where the guerrillas and bushwhackers were real active in this area. So the patrols would come out of Fort Donelson. A lot of them were attacked by these bushwhackers, and many of them were killed. Well, Jack Hinson had several sons. Well, two of his youngest sons, one 21 and one 17, were hunting one fall morning in the fall. I guess it was deer hunting, turkey hunting, maybe squirrel hunting. But then this Union patrol out of Fort Donelson came upon them, and the beings they were there and had rifles. They accused him of being bushwhackers or guerrillas. Well, back then they didn't have a trial or anything. They just tied him to a tree and killed him. Well, they drug their bodies on behind horses through to make an example of them through Dover. Then they decapitated them. They took their heads and they put them on the gate post going into Jack Hinson's place. Well, that was it. Jack Hinson then became bitter, of course, and rightfully so. And he swore to avenge his son's death, brutal murders. So he had a special-made sniper rifle. It was a gigantic gun, weighed 18 pounds, but it was accurate up to 500 yards. Well, on this bluff right up here, there was a cave about 20 some odd feet down below the crest of that bluff. And this is where he set up and hid in a cave. But right about where we are in here now is where the river channel ran. It was squeezed down because of an island called Towhead Island. Well, there was a chute that went close to the riverbank over here. It was called Towhead Chute. Now, as these boats would come up the river and hit this chute where it was squeezed down, they could only travel just very slowly. And so he could pick his targets without any problem. Well, he would sit there, and as these boats would come by, he usually picked the officers. So after the war, he was a hunted man. They had rewards out there, had many men out looking for him, but they never found him. Nobody ever reported him. But through the war, he like I say, killed an estimated 100 with a sniper rifle. And he, after the war, they had burned his home and destroyed everything that he had in Bubbling Springs. So he and his family, what was left of them, moved to Magnolia, which is White Oak Creek. And 1874 is when he passed away. But when he started his, to get revenge for the death of his sons, he was 57 years old. And back then, you know, that was kind of an old man. So he survived the war, but they never, and he was hunted the rest of his life, but nobody ever turned him in.
I want to thank y'all for coming out tonight, and we have a show and tell table. Oh, is that all of them? I think
Yeah, that's all of them,
yeah.
just one.
We have a show and tell table over here for the things that he has, the awards he's gotten. You're welcome to it, and then we got a little cookie and lemonade, which you whistle. So,
Mama,
anyway,
I want to say something.
you go right ahead.
You know, I can't pass it up. I'm Melinda Wings. I am Bobby and Betty's oldest daughter. But I just want to say, my dad made history come alive. I mean, his stories, you heard them there. You can envision and see the sniper, you see the cave. I mean, he told us stories driving down in White Oak. We got a cabin down there. There was always a story around every curve. The road used to go here. This used to be an old schoolhouse over here. I mean, he had a story for everywhere we went around here. And he talked about him hearing stories. He said he had always wished when he was younger that his grandparents used to make him go to his great-grandmother's house, Emily Jackson, and said that old lady'd sit on the front porch and she smoked a corncob pipe, and she would talk about, as a child, hearing the cannons at Fort Donelson. He said, I could have cared less about that. I just wanted to go back home and play. Daddy was young. He said, I'd give anything now if I had paid attention to that. But even in all of his family research, history research, he did so much, and he's written so many stories, and Janie, I'm sure, probably feels this way too. He talked about him so much to where, I mean, it's somebody that I felt like if walked in the door right now, I'd go, whoa, there goes Norman McKinnon, or there comes Gus McKinnon. You know, he brought him to life. You got to where you felt like you knew him. But Daddy loved this county. He loved this town. He loved Kentucky Lake. He loved fishing. And that's where you get him in a boat and he'd talk. And that's when Gary got, he taught us all to fish as soon as we could hold a fishing pole. Every summer vacation was coming down here, going to the lake, playing in the dirt, but we were always going fishing in the creek or fishing in the boat. And as soon as we were able to, he'd let us drive the boat. And like Mom said, he documented everything. There's notes on the backs of things of what it was. There was an old chest that sat in the hallway that kind of didn't need any more, looking to get some furniture down. Gave it to Katie, to Janie's daughter. Well, you open the drawer, there's a note in there about where this came from, what it was, who made it. I mean, how much it cost. Everything was done. Now, I did not realize all this growing up. I didn't realize a lot of this until I was looking at some of the stuff he had written right after he died. And I found a list of every time he went to the doctor's office, what time he got there, what time his appointment was, and what time the doctor came to see him, how long the doctor spent with him. I mean...
And who drove him?
Yeah, and who drove him. I mean, he was... that was almost a side I never knew. in addition to all the monuments and stuff he's done around here, one of the things he's done is at Wilson Cemetery down off White Oak Road.
Well, right behind Patsy and Wayland.
Oh, yeah. There you are. He had a plaque. It's a gravestone made. I've got a picture of it there on the table. That was where the old McKinnon farmstead used to be when they came over here in about 1830 through North Carolina, but originally from Scotland. So he had this marker made, and it's placed in the cemetery. A lot of the graves, when the cemetery is cleared off and it's really grown up now, you can look across it and you just see this all the way across it. So there's so many unmarked graves, but the old McKinnon log cabin had stood right by it, and a few years ago it was dismantled and the logs were sold for that. I did get to go with my dad on the honor flight. It was by far one of the coolest things I've ever done. All I can say is they have it now. I saw where Nashville is doing it again. It's for Korean and Vietnam vets. If you get a chance, go. It took me a long time to convince my dad to go. He said he did not feel worthy because he didn't see action during World War II. He was in San Francisco. He said he didn't feel worthy to do it. But he went, and just for my dad and just for all of the men that went. I was a chaperone. I had two people to look at, my dad and this other little man from Memphis that I kept losing. And anyway, but it's just an awesome thing, because I know a lot of you people here are veterans. Go and do it. Dad had, told stories about everything, and one of them that we still kind of laugh at is we'd be driving down the road and say something about going fishing. We'd drive past the cow pasture, and all the cows are laying down, fishing's no good. Whether that's true or not, I don't think so. He just probably didn't, I don't know, want to go through with
Tell
this.
the story about the Christmas present. Now, don't you tell it.
Oh. Okay. My dad could fix anything. He could build anything. We had the coolest playhouse in the backyard growing up. The cabin down at the lake, he single-handedly built that. Well, not single-handedly. He had Pete and Richard and them help him. But, I mean, he did all the work himself. He made water skis. He could work and fix anything. And what? Furniture, yeah. But most of all, as a father, he was loving and caring, and he taught us not just about life today and what we look forward to, but he taught us about the history of our life and our relatives and ancestors, and to the respect that what they have been through to bring forward to next generation. So, and for that, I thank him. So.
I've got to tell this story since you know your son. Tyler was his grandson. Tyler is the son of Leanne. Tyler spent a whole lot of time with him. He taught him Dad taught him to drive, how to fish, how to take care of everything. And he was a Civil War buff. I mean, Tyler knew all about the Civil War. And Dad would take him over to Fort Donelson. Well, they were at Fort Donelson one time, and Tyler said, well, I just see all these Union graves and all this. Where are the Confederates? Where are the Southerners buried? And Dad said, I'm afraid to tell you something, but they're just in a mass grave, all buried. And it just like to have killed him. He did not think that was so till they went in and they talked to the people that were there, the Rangers, and they said, well, yes, that's what it was. Well, he just thought that's the worst thing in the world. But anyway, they were out driving one day, and there was somebody had stuck a Confederate flag that was on a wooden python, stuck it in the ground.
He's about 7 years old.
Yeah, he was about 6 or 7 years old. And this Confederate flag was on a wooden pole stuck in the ground. And Tyler said, well, look at that. And Bob said, well, you know what that is, don't you? He said, no. He said, well, that's a Confederate flag. Said there's a Confederate soldier buried there. He said, really? Dad said, yeah. He said, why is he buried there? And he said, well, that's where he fell off his horse. So he died, so they just buried him there. But he had in his hand a Confederate flag and said they didn't want to get dirt on that Confederate flag. So when they buried the soldier, he still had that Confederate flag in his hand and said they just piled dirt around him. So that's the reason why that Confederate flag's there. Said that it's still in the hand of the soldier. And he said, oh, really? Of course, Tyler believed every word he said. And then Christmas, Bob got this Confederate flag, put it in a box, wrapped it up, gave it to Tyler for Christmas. That you would have thought that was the greatest Christmas present he had ever gotten, and he was just tickled to death that he had that. Leanne still got the flag. Y'all enjoy it. We've talked, and Mammy Hyatt, now that was one story that he said, I didn't want to go up there with that old woman, I wanted to go play with somebody else, but said she'd stay up there and smoke that corn cob pipe and talk about the Civil War. Said, Lord, what I wouldn't give to go talk to Mammy. That's what they call her, Mammy. But anyway, I appreciate y'all, and we do have refreshments, and y'all be safe.
Sit down.
Oh. Oh, how nice.
In memory of Robert Bob McKinnon, February the 5th, 1927 to December 5th, 2017. World War II Navy veteran, Houston County historian 2014 to 2017. Houston County Historical Society president 1997. Board of Directors 1998 to 2001, 2003 to 2017. For his leadership in the efforts to preserve Houston County's history with the placement of historical markers and the publication of historical photos, presented by the Houston County Historical Society 2019.
Oh, thank you.
The plaque that we have ordered, it has been ordered. They checked with them today. It will be in 2 to 3 weeks. They're in the process of making it. We will dedicate the plaque at our meeting in November. And that's a copy for Miss Bettye, and I have copies for the children too.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And a special thanks to Mr. Gary Baker for making the videos of Mr. Bob that we have seen tonight. And if you want to talk to Miss Bettye, and there's the show and tell table, and we will adjourn. Thank you.
Yeah, here's